Once upon a time, there were 4 characters living in a maze: Sniff, Scurry, Hem, and Haw. All 4 of them were mice, except for Hem and Haw, who were little people. Every day, they all went to the same place in the maze to find cheese, which was their source of happiness and nourishment. Hem and Haw had found a spot in the maze where they discovered a huge supply of cheese. They grew comfortable and complacent, convinced that the cheese would always be there for them. They even decorated the area with pictures and phrases that expressed their gratitude for the abundance of cheese. Sniff and Scurry, on the other hand, were not as complacent as Hem and Haw. They were always on the lookout for cheese and, when they eventually found it, quickly ate it all up and moved on, searching for the next supply. One day, Hem and Haw arrived at their spot in the maze to find that the cheese was gone. They were in shock and disbelief. They didn't know what to do, as their entire lives revolved around the cheese. Hem and Haw initially thought that the cheese would eventually return, but it didn't. Sniff and Scurry, on the other hand, had already moved on to find new cheese. They had a backup plan in place and were prepared for the possibility that the cheese would not always be there. As time passed, Haw started to realize that they needed to move on and find new cheese. Hem, on the other hand, refused to leave and stayed behind, hoping that the cheese would somehow return. Haw eventually set out on his own to find new cheese, leaving Hem behind. He had many fears and doubts along the way, but he eventually found a new supply of cheese. He even left some encouraging messages for Hem along the way, hoping that he would eventually find his way too. In the end, Hem realized that he was stuck and that he needed to move on to find new cheese. He eventually found Haw's messages and followed them to find a new supply of cheese. Hem learned a valuable lesson: that change is inevitable and that one must always be prepared for it. The story of "Who Moved My Cheese" teaches us that change is a constant in life and that we need to be prepared for it. It's important to not become complacent and to always be on the lookout for new opportunities. If we resist change and refuse to adapt, we may get left behind.